Hello everyone, here is another video from the series of Gospels. It's titled When Silence Speaks Louder Than Words. In this video, they discuss why Jesus was prohibiting his disciples and other people to proclaim that he is the Messiah. And it appears to be a conundrum of understanding why this happened. So
wait, so I don't understand. I truly don't. If your point is to tell first the Jews and then the world you're the Messiah, why wouldn't you want more and more people to talk about it?
I think it depends.
Why is that narcissistic?
Well, it isn't. Well, let's figure out first, to answer that question, let's figure out what narcissism is first. I mean, narcissism is the trumpeting of your own accomplishments. You pointed the other day when we were talking to the danger of religious hypocrisy. And we could put that in the context of using God's name in vain, right? Is making the claim that things that are for you are actually being done for the highest possible purpose, or praying in public, which is the display of your moral virtue so that good things can accrue to you, right? And I think there's ways, and you know this perfectly well, there's ways of doing the thing that you're doing and doing it properly and letting words spread and maybe even participating in that process without trumpeting any of that, right? Without waving it as a flag of virtue. And I think the issue here is that Christ is attempting to stand forth as an example of how to do good and also how to let the consequence of doing good be known without forcing that, without using power behind that. When God promises Abraham that good things will come to him if he follows the word of God, he tells Abraham if he follows adventure, he'll be a blessing to himself and that his name will become known. He offers that as a inevitable and proper consequence of treading the appropriate path. And to me, in these stories, what Christ is doing is letting that unfold in providentially rather than pushing it.
To me, the most telling thing, if I can interrupt,
please do.
In the Gospel of Mark, you've got this famous messianic secret really clearly where, don't tell anybody, don't tell anybody. He does this, but don't talk about it. And it's only at the very end, he's dead on the cross, so he can no longer silence anyone. The centurion says, truly this man was the Son of God. And so he knows it would be misinterpreted, it would be misunderstood until he came to the cross. That was the point where his kingship, his messiahship, being the son of David, being the gatherer of the tribes, when all of that became clear. And so the beautiful irony is when he can no longer silence, that's when the man, and it's the Roman, importantly, says, truly this man's the Son of God. I think it's just the fact that he'll be misunderstood and he knows it, and until the cross.
And there's a risk also, I think, that when you're communicating something on a I'll use the term global, though that doesn't make sense in context, it can very readily, once it stops being relational, it can very easily become propagandistic, and then it becomes very cult-like, because if someone's hearing something that's heard from someone that's heard from somebody, the more steps that it gets removed from it, and you said, I was thinking organic, but providential in terms of the spread is probably...
But is Mark the only gospel in which that...
It's prominent there, and that's the first gospel, so it sort of sets the tone.
Is there something about Mark and his audience that might be relevant to why it's so prevalent in Mark?
I don't have to think.
Many of you are better biblical scholars than I am. I mean...
It's just a very distinctive feature of the way Mark develops his account. So it's not absent in the other Gospels.
There's something relevant going on there for him, right, the author, and presumably the intended audience, right, that leads him to highlight that.
Classically, he's Peter's companion, amanuensis. And Peter, of course, famously doesn't get the Messiahship right. Peter doesn't understand it properly.
It seems odd for those of us making a recording that we hope millions will watch to oppose the idea of publicizing a good message.
Yeah.
Just for the record.
Why don't they keep publicizing the good message? He was publicizing his virtue. He wasn't virtue signaling. We could use a.
He wasn't publicizing. He was publicizing his presumed Messiah.
He was. So he was healing people. He was helping.
But he's such a strange
Yes.
Messiah.
So
think about it.
If you had a cure
Dennis,
for cancer, would you like a lot of people to know about it, or just let word of mouth spread?
Well, when you've
If
engaged,
they misuse that somehow.
look, this is a definite conundrum in terms of the relationship between moral behavior and communication about it, right? But think about the situations in your own life. I mean, you're a public figure, and you're doing what you can to do good, and you're also doing what you can to let people know about it. But you know perfectly well that there's a distinction between people who do that properly and people who push in a narcissistic manner, a sort of push that gets them in great trouble eventually, and everyone else too, right? Or they're pursuing fame for its own sake, right? And so, well, how would you say how would you think that the optimal person would balance the relationship between doing good and communicating about doing good? Because I think that's what the text is attempting to lay out. It's like, well, why don't you err on the side of humility?
I actually have a guiding principle. One, I have many. I have a theory of 3 mirrors in life. The physical mirror, how you look. The mirror of your mind, which is writing. That's how you know what you're thinking. And if you have convoluted writing, you have convoluted thinking. And the mirror of your character is who you draw into your life. If you're a public figure and you draw decent people into your life, it's a good sign. If you draw awful people into your life, it's a bad sign. So I think that that's one criterion. The other is a little prayer I make before when I go give a speech. God, I just want to say what you want me to say.
That's exactly my prayer too. Lord, give me the words that you want me to say.
Yeah.
I always make that same prayer.
Right. That's
interesting.
Yeah, it is.
So
But that's also
you
what
put
Jesus
yourself in
does.
service of something beyond yourself.
That's my whole self-image.
I think the incomprehensibility, I mean, keep in mind, we're having a discussion now also after this story is, in a sense, complete, though it's never complete. Yeah. But the incomprehensibility, I mean, Peter can't figure it out. Thomas, I mean, again and again, even the people who are closest, who are exposed to it, can't comprehend it. So I do think that the nature of the spread has to be, it's not like someone could just have an announcement and anybody would understand it. There's a sort of closeness to it that everybody is struggling with, even the apostles.
So that's the necessity of having it unfold in its own time and not pushing.
And relationally.
And Jesus gives it as a teaching himself. He says, if you go in to the, right, I think he talks about going into the synagogue, he says, sit in the back. He says, go to the back, and then they will call you. If they call you to the front, that is the real fruit, right? It's like what others say of you ultimately, or the way that others see your glory is much better than you trumpeting your own glory.
Well, he also says about fasting, when you fast, don't draw attention to yourself, because then you already has it, where having your reward is your trumpeting of your virtue. I think that really God, and you might say what God is an inherently self-othering principle. That we see that with the pregnancies of the mothers of John the Baptist and of Jesus, that they are bearing these children who then go off into the world and ultimately die. It's not about them in a kind of immediate or instrumental way. And I think if you take credit for your virtue, or you seem to want to draw attention to that, you fundamentally instrumentalized for yourself what is fundamentally non-instrumentalizable reality.
Dennis Prega is asking this question. He wants to know why. Actually, it's a good question, and it's good that he is asking this question, because there is a reason why Jesus couldn't say that he was a Messiah, and he was prohibiting people to proclaim his Messiahship. And divine principle is explaining this reason. I will read the divine principle. It's the second part. Divine principle is divided in 2 parts. This is the second part, and is in the second chapter of the second part. And there is a section, it's called Jesus Takes on the Mission of John the Baptist. So I will read and I will make comments. So let's start. In relationship to Jesus, the perfect Adam, John the Baptist came in the role of the restored Adam. He was to establish the foundation for the Messiah, thus completing all the unfinished missions of the central figures of the past, who had labored to restore the foundations of faith and substance. Okay, here, in order to understand what divine principle, how divine principle is explaining these things, is to understand the foundation for the Messiah. The foundation for the Messiah means that for the Messiah to come, for God to send the Messiah, God first builds the foundation for the Messiah. That's why we have all this chosen people history, because God wanted to prepare people who would receive the Messiah. So that's called the foundation for the Messiah. So the person who was responsible to build this foundation for the Messiah for Jesus was John the Baptist. So because and John the Baptist is also the second coming of Elijah. Here also we can see that John the Baptist came in the flesh, so the second coming of Elijah came in the flesh, so we can assume that second coming of Jesus also will come in the flesh. So but this is a second issue. The issue here is that throughout history the foundation for the Messiah was always not possible to build, because many people failed, many people have committed many mistakes, many sins, many failures, and that's why in order to indemnify all this history, God sent John the Baptist, the second coming of Elijah. Elijah actually came and he purified the chosen people, Israel, of these idols of Baal and Asherah, and however, after Elijah again was made many bad conditions for, and the foundation for the Messiah wasn't built. So that's why just before Jesus came, God sent John the Baptist to make straight the way for Jesus. So he was responsible to complete all the unfinished missions of central figures of the past. So to restore the foundation of faith and substance. The foundation for the Messiah is built on foundation of faith and foundation of substance. These two foundations actually build the foundation for the Messiah. So this was the mission of John the Baptist. So let's read next. Upon this foundation, he was to present all the fruits of providential history to Jesus and guide the Jewish people who trusted and followed him to receive Jesus. Finally, he himself should have attended Jesus with faith and devotion. This is what he is supposed to do. When we read what John the Baptist did, we read in the Bible, John the Baptist didn't do that. Didn't follow Jesus. He didn't guide the Jewish people to follow Jesus. He himself didn't attend Jesus. So that's why was the foundation for the Messiah, for Jesus to come as the Messiah, wasn't built because of the John the Baptist couldn't successfully build it. He didn't really follow the Messiah. He had doubts about Jesus being the Messiah. He in the beginning believed, but after he lost his belief. So let's read next. Even though John the Baptist did not know it, the baptism which he gave to Jesus at the Jordan River was in truth a ceremony of offering Jesus all of John's lifelong accomplishments for the sake of God's will. So God made this ceremony of Jesus being baptized by John the Baptist, and this was a ceremony not because Jesus was sinful and he needed to be forgiven and baptized by John the Baptist. This was not the purpose of this ceremony. The purpose was through this ceremony the accomplishments of John the Baptist are transferred to Jesus. This was the purpose of this ceremony, for the sake of God's will. So let's read next. Nevertheless, because John the Baptist gradually came to doubt Jesus and finally even undermine his work, the Jewish people who had the highest esteem for John were compelled to disbelieve in Jesus. Consequently, the foundation of faith which John had laid for the first worldwide course to restore Canaan was invaded by Satan. Jesus himself now had to take on John's mission and restore through indemnity the foundation of faith in order to set out on the second worldwide course to restore Canaan. When Jesus fasted for 40 days in the wilderness, it was to separate Satan for the very purpose of restoring the foundation of faith. However, for this he lowered himself to assume the position of John the Baptist. So how the foundation for the Messiah is actually lost? It's lost when it's invaded by Satan. So when Satan finding condition to invade, he invaded and destroyed the foundation, destroyed the offering. So in this case, the foundation was destroyed because Satan was able to invade the foundation which John the Baptist built. John the Baptist was very, how to say, he lived a very ascetic life. He was very good example. Everybody was looking up to him, and many people thought that he maybe is the Messiah. He was the role model, and but he had the foundation for the Messiah, but he didn't connect this foundation for the Messiah to Jesus, and that's why Satan invaded this foundation, and that's why Jesus has to build this foundation by himself, and he assumed the position of John the Baptist. That's why Jesus cannot say for people that I am the Messiah, and he prohibited Peter to proclaim his Messiahship, prohibiting people, various peoples to proclaim about him being the Messiah, because the foundation for the Messiah he wasn't there. He cannot proclaim it if there is no foundation. So that's why that's why this conundrum, that the Dennis Prager is asking this question, and there is a right questions, but there is not an adequate answer. So that divine principle give an adequate answer for this question. Jesus, who came as God's only begotten Son and the Lord of glory, was not meant to walk a path of suffering. Rather, it was for John the Baptist, born with the mission to make straight the way of Jesus, to go through tribulations. However, because John didn't complete his responsibility, Jesus had to undergo suffering in John's place. Jesus enjoined Peter not to reveal to the Jewish people that he was the Messiah, because although he was the Messiah, he had assumed John's role for the purpose of beginning this phase of the providence. So this is the answer to the question that Dennis Prager is asking them. Of course, Messiah, when Messiah coming, is the best thing. He need to proclaim he is the Messiah. Everybody should proclaim that he is the Messiah. Everybody should unite with him. However, when there is no foundation, Jesus doesn't have right to say that he is the Messiah, and he is lowering himself to the position of John the Baptist to build the foundation for the Messiah for himself, to come on that foundation, and after that he can proclaim that he is the Messiah. That's why in the Bible has these verses that when he prohibiting people to proclaim his Messiahship. So that's how I wanted to answer this question for this video, to put this input. I hope it will help. Thank you.